interview is for the Westchester Area School District Legacy Project. What is your name, what school did you go to, and your graduation year?
My name is Harold Winger, and I graduated in 1964, and I went to 3 different schools. I went to Biddle Street Elementary School, to Westchester Junior High School, and to Henderson High School.
How did you get to school?
I lived in town. I was a town kid all my life, so I walked.
What subjects were available for you to take in middle school and high school, like elective ones?
Middle school and high school had subjects that were much more basic and limited than what you folks have. In middle school, high school, it was pretty much math, English, history, science. People took gym, they took shop, home ec, things like that. And then once you got to high school, you could pick up the foreign language in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade.
How many students were in your graduating class?
I don't know. I graduated in 1964, and I was thinking about that driving in. Probably somewhere 200 to 300 students back then.
And what were your elementary, middle, and high school school's hours? Like, when did you have to wake up and get to school?
Pretty much the same as what they are now. High school started probably a little before 8, probably 7:30. We were out of school by probably 2:33.
What grades went to elementary, middle, and high?
It's different than what it is now because we didn't have middle schools. So we had kindergarten through 6th grade in elementary school, and then junior high school was grades 7, 8, and 9, and all of a sudden you felt like a really grown-up person because you got to go to high school, and that was 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade.
So junior high was a little different than middle school?
Junior high was a lot different than middle school.
And if you had to compare your school experience to how it is today, how would you?
It was much, much different. You folks have so many things that we didn't have back then. One of the bigger things is that Westchester back then was very small. It was a tiny community. You could envision Exton and the Exton Mall. Exton Mall wasn't there. The big intersection in Exton was one road, one traffic light, and on weekends there was so little traffic they'd turn the traffic light off and they'd have a blinking light there.
Wow.
So if you can envision everything being in Westchester. In Westchester you could buy food, you could buy clothes, you could buy cars. You really didn't need to go out of Westchester. There were very few malls. The only mall that I remember growing up as a kid was when they opened West Goshen Mall. I think out there now there's a Kmart, there's an Acme, but everything else was right in town. That was good because you knew everybody. And so growing up as a kid, we had one high school, and you went to school with kids from kindergarten through 12th grade, so you got to know them pretty well. And that, to me, was a big, big advantage. Another big one was there were no languages in junior high school. You didn't start language till 9th grade, and so you could take the foreign language 9th through 12th grade. The advanced sciences didn't start till 10th grade, so you took traditionally biology in 10th grade, chemistry in 11th, and then physics in 12th. So you couldn't take bio 2, you couldn't take chemistry or physics 2. There were no gifted programs back then. There were very few classes of what is now called special education. The kids were pretty much mixed together, and the kids that would be in what's now learning support and the gifted programs were pretty much all in there together. Another big thing was that you folks have so many more opportunities in terms of curricular offerings. You have electives. We had very few electives. Everybody pretty much walked in the door and did the same thing. throughout the school curriculum. So something like robotics that you folks are in, or having a film camera studio like this, having very specialized electives that you could do, didn't exist back then. I think another big difference was that the girls and the guys were separated for some classes. I think now you have co-ed gym. Back then we had a boys gym and we had a girls gym. For the non-academic programs, or the programs out of the traditional academic subjects, girls pretty much took home ec and cooking, and the guys took shop and mechanical drawing, and they were separated. So that was a big difference. Technology was very limited back then. I mean, I still remember as a kid when they invented color TV and going over to my good buddy's house, and all of a sudden you could see color on a TV, and that was like, wow. Things that you folks have right now, like little cameras like that, cell phones, computers, iPhones, all the tablet things that you folks have, robotics, space programs, anything like that was science fiction. You kind of read that in a book or a magazine and say, wow, that'd be really cool if we had that. So that was much, much different. Another thing I think that was different that you don't have now, when I was a kid in elementary school, we would start the day every day with pledge to the flag. I don't know if you still do that. And we would read the Bible, and we would say the Lord's Prayer every day before the start of school. We've done a couple other things. Let's see if I have any of these. Didn't cover them. I think that's really, those would be some of the main differences.
And what was your most memorable experience of school? Could be good or bad.
Oh, I had a lot of them. It seems like a long time ago, but I was just like you folks. I was a kid. Loved going to school, loved talking to my friends, loved going to classes. I had some great teachers that inspired me, that I still look back on with great admiration. But I don't think there was one major thing that stood out. I think if you ask anybody in my generation, in the 60s, of the most dramatic, the most troublesome thing that they went through, for me it was the day that John Kennedy was shot. And if you ask people in my generation, a lot of people can tell you exactly where they were. I was 12th grade, and I was sitting in a civics class, and they came on the loudspeaker and said, President Kennedy's been shot. And everybody was just quiet. They couldn't believe it, because he was a very popular president. And we'd just been through a lot of international things, the Bay of Pigs invasion, Cuban Missile Crisis. Those were fresh on people's mind, and he was a very popular person, identified quite a bit with younger people. So the idea that he would be shot was just something that was unthinkable.
So you said some of the classes in your schools were separated by gender.
Yes.
Were the schools separated by race?
There was only one high school, so everybody went to school together. I don't remember racial segregation or racial discrimination. I went to school in the town schools in Westchester, went to Little Street School, and throughout all my 12 years of school, I had a lot of good buddies that were black and Hispanic. I don't remember any kids of Asian descent anywhere in my classes back then. But there were, classes were very much integrated and very much together, and people seemed to get along. And again, I had many friends that were Hispanic and were black. In the 60s, there was a concern voiced by a number of members of the black community that the town schools were based on where you lived. So the kids weren't bussed all over the place. And so you went to school in a neighborhood school where you could walk to school. Some of the schools, like the High Street School, had both white and black students, but there was probably a disproportionate number of black kids in that school. The resolution of that came fairly quickly, and the school board closed two schools in town, High Street School and the Hill Street School where I went to school. And so everybody was bused, and a conscious effort was made, I think, to have much more of a balance between white kids and black kids in all the schools. But I don't remember kids feeling uncomfortable, at least from my perspective, concerning racial issues.
So was there any bullying between students?
We didn't call it that back then, but I'm sure there was.
So there was some kind of harassment?
Between white kids and black kids?
Well, not between anyone in general.
I don't remember specific instances, but I remember kids getting teased and kids having nicknames they probably didn't enjoy.
So what did your schools offer field trips?
They did?
What were some examples of where?
I don't remember, to be honest. None of them were memorable. I think one of the fun things I did, I was not part of a band, but I had a lot of friends that were in the band, and I was invited to go along on a band field trip. We went to the World's Fair, and that was fun in New York City. That was great.
So you said band. Were there any other after-school activities or in school?
There were not certainly as many as you have now, but we had boys sports, girls sports, probably a couple clubs, band, orchestra, choir, were extracurricular things, but certainly not the diversity that you folks have now.
Well, thank you for your time. And
That's it?
Yep, that
Good.
concludes this interview.
Well, Danny, you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.